this edition of 2020 Daily Trail Markers. It is full steam ahead for Thursday's Democratic presidential primary debate. The event will go on as planned. A campus labor dispute had threatened to derail the debate, but the two sides came to a tentative agreement Monday night. That clears the way for 7 Democratic candidates to take the stage at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. There are a number of other candidates in the race who failed to qualify. With the Iowa caucuses less than 50 days away, they are on a mission to make their case to the American people, even without a spot on the stage. CBS News campaign reporters Nicole Sganga and LaCrai Mitchell join me now. Nicole has been covering the race from New Hampshire, and LaCrai has been covering it from South Carolina. Welcome to both of you. So great to have you with us here and not somewhere very far away.
Exactly.
Right.
No, it's cool to be here.
Escape from the snow.
Yeah, that's right. You guys have been working super hard, and we really appreciate it. I want to begin, LaCrai, with New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. He, as you know, did not qualify for Thursday's debate, did not quite have the numbers. But he, along with other senators, including Julianne Castro, had wrote a pretty scathing letter to the DNC about changes they'd like to see to this process to make it a little bit more inclusive.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Senator Booker's plans?
So on Saturday afternoon, Senator Booker had led this effort where 9 candidates, himself included, sent a letter, as you said, to the DNC, to Chairman Tom Perez, saying, hey, the debate criteria as it is, it hasn't lended itself to have diverse voices on this stage, diverse voices that we think are critical. And so this letter was an added attempt to criticism that we've heard. This isn't new. You know, from the very beginning, we've heard criticism about the debate thresholds and how it has left some voices off of the stage. And so Senator Cory Booker has sent this letter, and essentially what you see is, while he won't be on the debate stage, he's continued to keep his name in the conversation. And what we will see is that instead he's going to start a bus tour throughout Iowa, I believe 12 counties throughout 5 days. And on actual debate night, he'll be in Urbandale, Iowa, phone banking. And so he's continuing to make this effort to connect with voters, even though he won't be on the stage.
So he's showing no signs of slowing down his campaign, full speed ahead for Senator Booker.
Correct.
I want to ask you about Julianne Castro, Nicole, because he also added his voice to this letter. He's been critical, even before this letter, of the DNC qualifications. How is he planning to remain relevant?
Well, Secretary Julianne Castro has made the argument in state after state. He told reporters, if we're not going to fight for everybody having a seat at the table, why the hell are we Democrats calling on Iowa and New Hampshire to step down as the first in the nation primary and caucus? But he's also going to insert himself in the conversation. He's going to California, where the debate is being held. He's visiting LA on Wednesday. He'll be on Skid Row, visiting a women's center. And he's also hoping to rally supporters on Twitter with the hashtag #JulianneDebate, pointing out missing pieces of the conversation where he's come out first on the issues of homelessness, on police reform, on issues of poverty. So really getting supporters to point out what's missing on that debate stage Thursday night.
Has Castro come up with sort of any practical alternatives? Let's say New Hampshire and Iowa are not the first voting states. Has he suggested something like having a rotating list of states so that every election cycle there are new first voting states? That might spread the wealth a little bit, right? Then candidates would spend more time in different states and not always Iowa and New Hampshire.
Well, this is actually really interesting, Tanya, because he's called on the DNC and the next DNC party chair to switch up the primary order. But what's interesting about New Hampshire, where I'm embedded and reporting in, is that the DNC actually has no say whatsoever on New Hampshire voting first in the nation. That is up to the Secretary of State. It is written in state law that he protects that first in the nation primary. And so we've yet to see Secretary Julianne Castro respond to that and present a legitimate plan going forward. We also know that he is polling nationally at less than 1%.
Right.
So hard to make that argument.
And of course, he won't be, on the debate stage on Thursday, but he will be in California. Is Castro planning on making campaigning in California a big part of his strategy going forward?
Well, certainly California has more electoral votes, more points for him to rack up than all of the first 4 early primary states combined in the electoral college system that we have. So that's certainly interesting. He will be touring throughout Los Angeles, and then he moves on to the next state. And so he will keep powering on. He wasn't on the last debate stage, so this is the second debate stage where he'll actually be absent.
Now, LaCrai, we know that 2 fundraising pleas were levied by candidates. What is the ultimatum that Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard is making?
On Twitter, she essentially said Monday evening, look, if I don't get $1 million, I believe it is, within, these coming days, that might be it. I've talked to her team on background, and I think that it's more of a push to make sure that they have the funds in place to be able to continue to move forward. So I'm not sure that it's dire, but I do think there's something to be said that she's made a pointed push in these last few weeks to really double down in New Hampshire and South Carolina, our states. And I think there's something to be said about it being more economical sometimes to campaign in primary states versus your caucus states. So if you don't have the money and you don't necessarily have the organizing and ground game, it might be more advantageous to focus on these primary states where it might make a little more sense in terms of really stretching your dollars. I think the other thing to consider is that she was in South Carolina over the weekend, and she has started to make some hires on the ground. And some people may say it's a little later, but I do think that she is starting to see, as most candidates have come around to see, that really putting money down and roots down in a state like South Carolina can bode well, because it is that primary state right before Super Tuesday. And if you are able to garner some momentum going into that Tuesday, that could mean a totally different story for you, regardless of how you place in those first 3 early states.
All right. Colorado Senator Michael Bennett also made a request for donations. He says he needs more funding in order to launch this ad. Let's look.
If you want a president who's focused on the next generation and not just the next tweet, then give me a look. I'm Michael Bennett, and I'm running for president.
So, Nicole, tell us about that. How is, Bennett's campaign doing?
Well, obviously it is a delegate game, but it's also all about momentum, which is something that LaCrai just brought up. And so he is looking to get that much needed push in the state of New Hampshire. So they've put out this fundraising call. They're looking to raise $700,000 by January 16th, so roughly a month over the holidays, so that they can push this ad onto the television and digital airwaves. He's also made a pledge to do 50 town halls in the final 10 weeks in the run-up to the New Hampshire primary. So far, he's been visiting the state quite frequently, but we know that we have a possible impeachment trial coming up in January, which could certainly complicate things. I asked the senator precisely that, and he said if he has to do teletown halls, if he has to take shuttles back and forth from Washington, D.C., he's planning on sticking to his promise.
All right. Well, LaCrai Mitchell and Nicole Sganga, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Us.
Great job you guys are doing.